you guys as much information as possible to help you guys become better agents and consultants for your clients to grow your business and, have good results. So a little bit just about me. We're doing about 70 million a year. Our average price point is $950, anywhere from 300 to 5 million. Just loving helping people. That's buyers, sellers, agents, just to have that good, helping them figure out all their stuff. I'm a mom of two, Grant and Audrey, navigating through teen years right now. So every chapter is different for all of us, learning how to navigate this, but love helping, people in general. So hopefully this will be very helpful to you guys. So consulting, I'm going to start with buyer consultation. You need to really decode the buyers and figure them out, which is not always easy, depending upon how much they share, who they are, and figuring out them. You got to really peel back that onion to get all the information that you need, because they don't always give it to you up front. You have to earn that trust, and just strategically searching to find opportunities for your buyers. So, just a couple basic things, before the appointment, you got to be speedily. They have to know that you're available and responsive. And then we have an email that we send with a whole list of criteria that we're asking our buyers to fill out, and then booking the appointment and a calendar invite. So you're already showing that you're organized, and then we send a high note, of some information. I'll show you that quickly here. Get back.
We're not supposed to ask questions. Is this for every lead?
No, this is, so I'll tell you, it's, part of the pain point is getting people to do this sometimes. I think this is the ideal situation, right? Where you're doing all these things and you have a system and you're doing it. It's just better results and you're keeping organized. And then at the appointment, this is where it is your time to shine and connect and to build that trust, because you haven't earned it yet. You have to ask a lot of questions, and you also have to kind of figure out who they are. Are they a very a little bit meek and a little bit shy, and or are they a really strong arm person and they are telling you that you don't know what you're doing, and you got to really earn that. And so how you kind of develop your relationship can change, but asking the questions and kind of mirroring their personalities back helps them feel comfortable. Info on their timing. Timing is a huge driver for buying. So people won't always tell you everything. So the more questions can lead to the next one, and then it's the trying to align the stars. Are they selling? Do they have to sell? Can they stay? They don't always know. So you really have to ask more questions, because if it's not so obvious, because some people will say, oh yeah, no problem. I can stay here. We don't need the money. I want to find the next one. Great. The answer is clear, but it's 50% of the time it's not clear. So you're digging for that relevant information, and then be prepared. 30% of the time, the story changes. So don't think that what you're getting up front is actually how it's going to play out. You have to be able to earn their trust and figure out how to pivot with them. So decoding buyer goals, what are their needs, the criteria, and the more specific, and you get them talking. People love to talk. People, this is exciting for them. You want to make them feel excited, it's not a chore. So the more you ask about their ideal situation, their ideal property, they're going to be more excited to, tell you more. Sometimes we'll have people do homework assignments when you're it's not clear of what you guys really want. And with couples, we do it separately. Okay, you fill out this, your top list. Start with number 1, and you give it a 10 that it's a must-have, or is it a 9 that you're it's a almost must-have, and then you kind of go down, and so then you compare. And sometimes it's really interesting to see the couples I didn't realize that was that important to you, or I didn't realize that you were willing to forego on that. So it helps to get some clarity. And then telling them that when we go see properties, we're going to rank them 1 through 7. 7 is a unicorn. You're likely not going to find it, so don't expect a 7. So if it's a 5 or 6, you're going to be, I'm going a little ahead of myself. 5 or 6 is the offering discussions now. Getting pre-qualified. We're working with one right now that they were going to sell their current house, and now they don't want to. So then we're like, okay, can you qualify? And it's like, well, no, they can't. So then we found out they have an investment property, but their leases for another year and a half. We're like, well, that's going to be tougher. Yes, we can sell, but you're going to have a very small buyer pool. Well, then a couple days later, they tell us they have another investment property that they can sell that one. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And then, but this qualification is still not where they want to get to. And then another couple days later, they tell us they have I didn't tell the lender about our 401k. I was like, okay. So I'm like, is there any other assets? And they're like, oh, we do have another property in Old Town. Okay, great. And so like we got on the call last night actually with the lender to talk about all of these extra things that we've discovered and like, how we're figuring that out. A bridge loan's an option, recasting it later. Working with the lender to get on a phone, on the evening is important too. So they're going to do that for agents that they know will send them business. And then obviously getting, this is some of the basics about contingencies. I'm not going to go really in that. Okay. And then strategic searching, like sitting back and waiting for the bright MLS listings is not acceptable in my opinion. Like, especially in a market like this, you have to have examples of like, this is what we did for these buyers in the past. This is what I want to do for you. Like, I can't guarantee it, but we will try to find you other opportunities, so that way, one, you might not be competing. Obviously, it's going to create other options for you. And then hopefully if you'll see that how hard we're working, that you'll then recommend us and give us good reviews. So that's when you're also hitting them when you do these things for them, asking to do that later. I mean, these are, auto alerts. We started using Zenlist. We really like it. It's actually, I've not been at Compass, but it's very similar to their technology. And our clients really like it. We can see what they're doing. We can communicate to there. We can actually schedule through showing time right from there. It's a really nice platform. You can see what they're looking at. And just, ways to get off-market opportunities. Agent relationships, I've had a lot of agents that will share what they have coming up because they know that they've worked with us and that we will make it easy for them. So so think about that. You don't want to ruin a relationship with a difficult client. So you can have future opportunities too. And we've sent letters. We've, reached out to our past sphere. I actually had one this week. I called knowing that somebody lives in a neighborhood and asking if she knows any neighbors. And she's like, well, actually, I'm thinking about selling, or that she's going to be. So that's, just doing that due diligence. Some advice when you're doing showings: schedule the worst first and end on the best one. So they appreciate that, especially when you're first starting. If you're going to show them the best house that's out there right now, it's good. There's expectations are going to be up here, and to understand that like how expensive things are here, and with low inventory, start with that when you're starting with somebody. If there's a hot listing, new on the market, call that agent so you can get information, because if they're already working on a contract, it's very helpful that you show up and know what's going on than just guessing. So if they're telling you like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this property, do the research and show up with information. For your first, for like a new lead that doesn't really know you or trust you yet, text them, I'm stopping for coffee. What can I get you? Not, do you want anything? Because they're going to say no. What can I get you? It's just a nice little offering to give something. And then, print out the gallery for them to take notes on it so you come organized. And draft a contract ahead of time if you have been working with them, you think it's going to be good. So that way you can go over it. And like, we have literally won properties that 30 minutes later, there was another contract that came in for $50,000 more. We also once lost one that's had a 10 a.m. deadline, was talking to her all morning. Like, we'll get it to you. We're working on, we're just, making a couple things. Like, and then I'm like, it's on its way. She got it at 10:07 and responded, sorry, you missed the deadline. We're accepting another one. Like, you have to be prepared for crap like that, because all of us agents don't have handbooks that we're using, and we don't know what the other side's going to do or not do. So that's probably one of the biggest things that you have to realize with, this game of relationships and how it can play out. Okay, so during the showing, you're listening. You're not gonna be like, this is the kitchen, right? Like, you're looking to see what they like, what they don't. Ask them a few questions without being annoying. Point out things that might not be obvious to them, like, oh, hey, notice there's not a dining room in here. Is that important to you? Notice the windows are old. That budget for for new windows. oh, you don't mind the busy road, but just realize that when you go to sell, there's going to be less buyers. So giving them that real information, like I don't ever sell a property. I want them to know the downsides of a property too. So then, when I tell them like this is going to go for probably 100 grand over, they're going to believe me as well. Or I think it's overpriced. Like I think it's probably 50,000 overpriced. You're building that trust. Look for inspection issues. Most of them are going to be in the basement, looking for, when you go there, you are sniffing it out because they then are going to trust that you are looking out for them because you don't want somebody buying a problem. But in the drywall, I always look to see if there's any kind of like moisture things, any rust anywhere, cracking anywhere. Like those are the biggest things. And if they like it, please take a video to save yourself time, to save them time and the seller time so they can go back and virtually walk through it. So we will take a video of the property, upload it to our YouTube, and then send them the link. And then they can share it with their family too. And they really, really appreciate that. And if it's a good one, try to get both parties there. After the appointments, you're also going to be doing your job of, we'll try to book the next appointments. This is kind of backwards. After the appointment setting. Sorry, these were out of line. Send a thank you email. And we also have another high note with more information about us and the buying process. Okay. I can look at it here. It's probably better. Hold on a second. Okay. So people don't realize that you might be working with 10 other clients. You don't want them to, that you want them to feel like they're your only clients. Following up, sending a video of a home that they like. You can do a personal video. Like we use Follow Up Boss. So from your phone, you could say, hey, just thinking of you today. This house just came on the market. Make sure you check out the backyard and the pictures. Like making it personalized is really helpful. Send the comps that they liked. If they like a property, send the comps so they can start like thinking about the offer. Research the property history. That's actually really insightful sometimes to see, have they listed it before? When did it sell? And then if you know the year that it sold, does it make sense of like appreciation? And then helping them solve their issues. We'll get into that. Ask them to always rank their top 3 homes as they're seeing properties because you want them to forget about the rest. And then this is where I talked about the rankings. Have them rank them if they're like thinking about it. And if they say it's a 4, like move on. Like this is a problem that buyers like to just hang out in houses and just look around. But your time's valuable, and you want to keep them focused. And then here's good. Oops, not office. Offer to discuss. This is one I added in this morning. Okay, some examples I want to share. And these are examples that you have to think about for yourself when you're talking to a buyer. If they hear stories of what you've been able to solve for other people, they're going to think that you can do the same for them, which you should be doing. So I already shared the one about this McLean buyer that went from, not giving us all the information, and it's already pivoting of their qualifications and trying to figure out the buy sell. It's going to be hard still because they don't want to sell their property first, or they don't want to sell their property at all now, but they have to get a rental on it for qualifications. It's a lot of things, and having the lender on the phone was very helpful, but we came up with some solutions, but it's still going to be tight, and the timing is but they understand it. It's like, but we're going to be now selling one of their investment condos. Another set of buyers, we actually got an off-market opportunity, and they loved it. They're like, oh my God, we know, we're buying this house. I'm like, you haven't even seen the inside. We don't have any pictures of the inside. Like there's nothing. And they're like, nope, we're going to buy it. I don't care. We'll renovate it. We love the street. We love the pool. We love, everything. So I called the agent and I said, so I know you can't let us in, and you're not ready, but we're going to submit an offer to you, sight unseen. And she's like, Megan, come on, you're killing me here. And I was like, well, what, I'm just trying to do my best. And, she also knows that we're going to do we have to have some kind of protection, which we'd have a short 3-day inspection. And then that way we always have the out, right? And so she's like, fine, let me get you in there. So we got them in there, got it under contract, and she ended up listing it on the MLS and got a contract sight unseen for $50,000 more than ours that we had ratified for. So giving an example like that, even if it's like on your team or, if you're in our community, like, hey, my partner just did this and this is what we do. It's nice to have, now you guys can share that story too, right? Like my partner, Megan, did this. This is what we try to do. Another couple we're helping right now is actually last weekend. It was a $2 million property. So they went from 1.5 when this one hit to 2 million, like overnight. So that's hard to digest for people when they haven't seen all the other properties at that price point. But the wife loved it. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is like uncomfortable for me, but I love it too. So they had a noon deadline Monday. And Amanda and Courtney came to the pre-inspection. And that's what, they told everybody. And I said, we don't have to follow those rules. We can go ahead and submit now as soon, and we can do some signing bonuses to encourage the seller versus an expiration to try to choose hours before that deadline. So honestly, they just hemmed and hawed about it too long. And then I get a call on Saturday night or text, hey, sorry, Megan, we just got a really amazing contract that sellers are likely, going to want to accept, but I want to give you a little time. Like, okay, great. How much time? 9 a.m. Sunday, tomorrow morning. I'm like, well, I'm about to go out to a fundraiser. I'm literally walking out the door in 15 minutes, but I'll get it done. Yeah, I'll get it to you by 9 a.m. So I'm like texting them, like, I already have the contract drafted. Thank you. And so it's ready. It's ready to go, and I can get it done by 9 a.m. if they want. They didn't. They chose to just. It ended up going to close to 2-3. Is what he told me. So I was able to get that information out of him, which was very helpful. Questions? Yeah. Signing. Yes, I'll go over that. That's a trick that I've used that is very helpful. Yeah, you're welcome. Yep. Yeah, off-market properties, I should probably go back to that one and go over it a little bit. Here we go. So, we have EXP off exclusives. Going back, there's not a lot of expires and withdrawals in this crazy market, but we go back to rentals as well. So I've recommended go back 1 to 5 years. Look for properties that have rented, that have not sold, and that are in their criteria. And you'll probably find 10 or more, but you then have to hunt down either the owner, and if you can't find them, then you're going to contact the listing agent like, hey, is there a shot that you guys would sell this property? It fits my buyer's criteria perfectly. So it's harder. We send out letters to neighbors like, hey, we've got buyers. They get a lot of those, so you really have to make it more personal. We sometimes put a picture of the people. And Top Agent Network, I got a property from there and got it under contract for my buyers a couple years ago. It was a $2 million property that nobody else knew about yet, and was able to get in. Reach out to past clients in Sphere. So that's another thing, like who's in the database, who do you know that's in that neighborhood, who do you know that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. Like figure it out. Like find opportunities to connect and just ask around. Who's the president in the HOA, right? Who's the listing agent? So we a lot of times are calling, do a search of all the sales in the last 2 years, sort it by listing agent, who's doing the most. You're going to call them, right? I also do the favor bank. So it's like, help me help you. Like I had one that they helped us win for our buyers that gave us the information. I'm like, well, you have a favor bank now. Like I'll help you someday too, right? So you're really like, you should be networking and helping other agents. You need to have good relationships with agents because they'll help you back. Like I have another agent that she calls me every couple of weeks to tell me all her listings, and she does a ton of listings because we've brought her buyers and made it easy for her. And I also brought her wine to her door after a closing. She's like, yeah, I want some more wine. like as if you can't afford it because, but okay. All right. So one other thing, like Monica on our team, she was in negotiations. Another interesting thing that I suggested she do is a condo in Reston. I was like, go back to see what the builder paid for that condo. And the one that they keep talking about as their comp that we think is too high, see what the builder paid for or sold it for, and see what that one sold for, and see what the price difference is, the percentages, and then apply that to what this comp just sold for. And it actually showed that one seemed to be like way overpriced. So then they accepted the lower offer when she was able to give. So you're thinking about how can I also convince the other side that that's negotiations, that this is like a good offer. So that's one other trick. Okay. Once they've identified the property, you have to call the listing agent and play nice and ask the appropriate questions to get the information. And some agents are like tight-lipped, and other ones will tell you almost everything. Time kills deals, time makes deals. Find out when they're reviewing offers. Again, we now know that is not always their plan. They have a plan, but that can change. And you have to make sure your buyer knows this, so then they're not pissy at you when all of a sudden the plan changed. We're like, well, I told you like that's their plan, but remember I said it can change. So you're always kind of like setting expectations along the whole way too. Ask the questions. Is it, if they have a contract already, is it full price? How strong is it? What terms might be missing? Because they might not share, but if you just keep asking, you're going to get something. Any insight on your pricing and seller's expectations? What terms are most important to the seller? If my buyer decides to write, how quickly can they respond? Then that they're giving you a commitment of when they would get back to you. So then you're managing that expectations too. Do you have an offer deadline? Again, it can change. And then you discuss options. So this is like the consulting part of it, of like really helping them understand what can happen. So if it's before the deadline, so the signing bonuses. So what we've done is if the seller signs by 5 p.m. tomorrow, then number one, we will increase the sales price by $50,000, and a new sales price will be, $115,000. We will, give a free rent back. We will pay for any termite remediation. Like you can add things in here that it's not a deadline now that it will expire, because that often is annoying to sellers. But if you can make it a positive, like I actually had somebody a couple years ago pull over in the side of the road as he was driving cross country to sign our contract to make sure he got that $5,000 bonus. I'm like, well, it's first day in the market. The chances are it's probably I knew it was gonna sell for higher if they waited. But my buyer only wanted to give $5,000 more. They took it. Yeah, funny. Okay. And if they really are gonna wait, sorry, we're adhering to our deadline, I think being the last one in is best then. Because then you can try to get the information. Are you up against one, or are you up against 10? Because then the buyer's like, oh, snap. If there's 10, all right, fine, I'll go another X and I'll waive that. Sometimes they need that information to really get to where they need to be. But I will say, one of the things I had recommended to these buyers, like even if they don't accept your offer because they're going to keep their Monday deadline, they're going to feel badly that they just didn't accept your great offer and they're making you wait. So now you have an emotional connection. They're going to be rooting for you. So that's another way to increase the chances that they help you win. So sometimes if you're going right out of the gate, you can make that emotional connection with them. And I've had sellers that have done that. They're like, oh, well, we really feel bad for these people, Oh, I got to go faster. Okay, I'm like, well, Sydney's looking at me because I have a lot more to cover. Okay. Once they identify a property, when did it last sell? Look at the history. What improvements since the last sale? What's the tax value? Okay. So these are looking at the listing agent sales history is super insightful, because again, we don't have handbooks for us realtors of how we're doing business. So everybody does it differently. Build the good relationships. We've talked about that. Use the favor bank. And if you don't know that agent, find a realtor that does. Look at their sales and be like, oh, I know Kay Houghton. Kay Houghton just had a sale with that agent. So I'm going to call Kay and say, hey, Kay, what do you know about Ryan? And she's like, oh, Ryan, Ryan and I are buddies. Yeah. I was like, well, can you help me? Can you put a good word in for Ryan? Because I've got these buyers, and will you help me? So then Kay's going to help me get to Ryan. So you guys got to think about things like that too. What is their sales trends? Are they a listing that just started? They don't have a lot of sales. Are they, do they have 20 years experience, and you can see their averages? 105% of list price, or it's 92% of list price. Look at that. I mean, that is really, past indicator of future and what they're advising their sellers. That's a really big key point that we always go over. So do they overprice or underprice? Do they have price drops? We don't see that in this market that much. It's just a psychology, what they're advising their sellers. If they identify property they like, move fast, consider a pre-inspection. Is anybody not familiar with a pre-inspection? Okay. Escalation clauses. You have to educate them on this. There are pros and cons to an escalation. The pro is you can win against another one that's increments. It doesn't have to go to their max. The con is it shows your cards. You can actually, I had a seller that we got, a 1.3 escalation. The next one was 1.3. She's like, no, just counter them at 1.35. I'm like, if we counter, they're going to probably know that we don't have that. And you are risking them, that buyer being annoyed and just flaking and not proceeding. She's like, that's fine. I'm like, I think that's a really high price for this property. It was land. And that's exactly what happened. They're like, nope, we're out. We're not going to play this game because you didn't use our escalation. So if you just kind of educate them on the possibilities, and that they understand, then there's no surprises when things play out. But I always say, and if they like it, but they're okay losing it, that's okay too. They just have to understand that that might be an outcome. What time are we at? Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, lender letters. I think we're all familiar with that. Okay, so sometimes I do Vegas odds. Like, okay, if you offer this, 90% chance the seller's going to take it. If you offer this, it's honestly probably like a 50-50. If you offer this, just be prepared. You're probably going to get rejected. And that's okay as long as you understand that. But then you're going to be negotiating against yourself when they just reject you, and then you're going to have to resubmit, and the seller's going to be less flexible. Now, we're not talking about like first day on the market, perhaps, but you're usually not coming in low, or you're just going through the process of getting the buyers educated, and you're going to lose. So it's more like just getting them understanding the market. So giving them options, you have to give them information. You have to run the comps. You have to do the listing agent sales history. You have to feel good about what you're advising them. I had an agent a long time ago that she just had them pay full price. I saw the contract, and I'm like, why? It's been on the market for a while now. Why are they paying full price? And she's like, well, they were fine paying full price. I'm like, well, where are the comps that you sent? She's like, oh, I looked it up myself. I'm like, no, you got to send them, and yeah, I helped and took over, and we got it for like 50,000 less. So like really making sure that you're doing your due diligence, because I just think like you have to do that for people, because you don't want them overpaying. Because the worst is like if the market, if they have to sell in a year because whatever, and now they're bringing money to the table. Okay, I kind of went over some of this already. Pre-inspection. So with the inspections, there's 4 levels. We all know that there's regular one, there's option to void. There's also a middle ground of, hey, we want an option to negotiate, but we'll waive the first 5,000. It actually buys your buyer time, but gives the seller some peace of mind that they're not going to be nickel and dimed. So that's another one that you can use. We already know about the financial gap, appraisal gap. What's that? Oh, sure. So we have a full inspection. We have the option to void only, or no inspection because you did a pre-inspection. But there's also another one that you have the option to negotiate, but you put in extra language that says buyer will forego the first 5,000, 10,000 of any inspection items. So there's still the negotiation period. It still buys you more time. But if there's a big ticket item, it's to be negotiated. Because sometimes the pass fail option to void, it still has that, but it's really tight on time, right? When you're doing like 7 days only, and then you're like, snap, like tomorrow's day 7 and we don't have any extra time. So that buys you time. That helps buyers, especially nervous buyers, that time. I always recommend for buyers, you're doing the auto extend financing. I always counter that as a listing agent to auto expire. I want firm deadlines. And another trick is, especially when you're competing and you're like, I don't want to just have my escalation used. You can actually offer to sell or the buyer to pay some of the seller's closing costs, which you never see. Has anybody ever done that before? You have. Of course, Jennifer Mack has. She's a good negotiator. So that way it also helps, like win against other people in a creative way. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, you're getting the money as a seller. This is just a creative way. Yeah.
I think you're saying make it really competitive.
And very competitive, or you're trying to shut it down.
Yeah.
The seller, it's like if you can add another, 10 grand to the sales price, but it actually feels a lot nicer and better when they're like, oh my gosh, the buyer's going to pay $10,000 of my closing costs versus just seeing the sales price. So it's just another like little feel good. The terms, free rent back, we know about that. Even offering to reimburse them for I had this done on one of my listings. I'm like, well, this is great. I'm going to steal this. The buyer agent said that their buyer would pay for our seller's utilities during the rent back. I'm like, our sellers loved it. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. Yeah. So another trick, you have to really educate your buyers, a non-refundable earnest money deposit. And you guys may have done that before, but the other thing is you can also have it payable to the seller. Now I've had brokers and agents tell me I can't do that. You can, but the seller should also be made aware that they are liable to give that back if they default, right? So just, there's some liability in there, but it's one of those things like if you have a buyer that's like, oh my God, I'm going to be devastated if I lose this. I'm not going to cancel. I'm comfortable with buying it. Like all these things, that's another trick.
I have a question. I had one recently where I was the buyer. We had 0 contingencies. Seller agent countered saying we had to make our EMD non-refundable.
Okay.
Like we couldn't cancel anyway. There was no HOA. We had no contingencies.
So one thing that, and I don't know if they put this language in, but you can put in that the EMD is non-refundable. What's the language? And payable to the seller without demand. So that's what I would do.
Have us do that.
Okay, so that's a way to say like, if you guys are not going to show up, I'm not going to go through this legal hassle of like, because you still have to get those release signed off, right? So that eliminates that. Okay. Oh yeah.
There's no contingency, but if you did default on something, we don't just automatically. Because I'm the listing agent, we don't just automatically get the EMD. We actually have to negotiate it.
Yeah.
Sign off, and the likelihood is that your clients aren't going to sign off. All of it will probably. So by making it fundable, to your point, then it's like really as a listing agent, you should go that extra step. The idea behind non-refundable.
Yeah, it's not automatically refundable. Just because it's non-refundable, it doesn't go right back to the seller. It still has to be signed off. So that language is another step, another trick that you can use. And you have to educate that listing agent because they're probably not going to understand what that means. Make it easy for the listing agent. Don't send me 7 different documents and have a bunch of errors in there and don't follow my instructions. And then your conveyances are all like messed up that we put out there for you in the bright documents. Because that tells me that the rest of this process is going to be a nightmare too. And these are some of the examples I already gave you. You guys probably can't read it this far away, but I've already told you some of them. If contract is ratified by date and time, signing bonus of $5,000 will kick in to increase the sales price automatically. You can have it expire. I that feels icky. So again, if the seller signs and ratifies by, and then you give all of these things, this is always page 1. They see it as soon as they get it in that 30-page document. Payment of settlement costs up to $7,000. Okay. Here's another one. Seller contributes to termite remediation will be lesser than 50% if the cost is $500. That was a kind of weird one with the buyer. Okay. Seller consultation. I'll try to get through this fast. Trying to win the listing and get their confidence that you're going to solve their problems, right? And figure them out and what they need, because it is a shifting. This list side is so different than the buy side. But you're going to empower them to take ownership of these decisions. Your job is to consult them on their options, figure out the layers, peeling back the onion of their situation, and then come up with a strategic custom plan for them. So again, I mean, you got to show them from the beginning, speeds at least, set out an email with like specifics. We have a whole questionnaire, being prepared with coming to the property with the history, the comps, and we have a whole presentation. And then afterwards, when we book the appointment, we put it in their calendar, we add a high note. Okay, and then figuring out their motivations to better advise them and give them options. So again, I always tell them, I'm not a salesperson, I'm a consultant. So think of me as your advisor that gives you all the options throughout the entire process, and you decide. And what my job is also to help you know what those possible outcomes are as well. So that way, you know, if you're choosing this is probably likely what's going to happen. And my job is also to figure out problems and solve them before they happen. But you don't know what that is yet because you don't do this every day, but I do. So that's why you're trusting me as your listing agent. Okay, so their goals, buying or selling. So let us try to line the stars for you. Do you need to sell? Do you need, do you need to buy your next home before you, or do you want to really? Everybody wants to buy their next home before. Or do you need to sell first to get the equity out? That's the chicken or the egg. That's the timing where you have to ask so many more questions. Whatever they answer is like, okay, well, what about this scenario? You know, what I don't want is anybody being homeless, and no seller wants to pay double mortgage for months on end. Do they need a bridge loan? Can they recast the loan? Does anybody not know what a recast is? It's okay, because most people don't. Most agents don't. Okay, so recast is if you go and buy a property, but man, you wish you had your equity out of your current home. What you can do, you have to make sure that the lender, allows this loan. Once you sell, if you can qualify to buy this one, once you sell, you can say, oh, great, I've got my $500,000. I can actually recast my new mortgage, and it just drops the principal balance by $500,000, and it recalculates the monthly. So the interest rate doesn't change, the amount of time doesn't change left. It's not a refinance, and it's like $350. Lenders don't tell you this because there's no money in it. But you guys, as good consultants, know this, and you're going to tell them this is an option that might solve their problems. Are they, quick sale, or are they not in any rush at all? So we've had sellers that it's taken them over a year to prepare their property. They're just, not in a rush. We met with somebody last week that they told us it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years. I'm like, great. Glad we're here. No, I think they wanted some of our advice of home improvements, which is fine. And then we had somebody else that they've been coming to our open houses for 5+ years. And they finally just told us, oh yeah, we're moving in 2 months and we need to sell our house and get the money out for that sale. I'm like, what? I've been talking to you guys for 5 years. So I'm going to go over that option next. And then, are they out of state? We've had sellers that have called us. We've never met them. They found us online. We manage everything. So you need to tell them, how we can help them. You don't have to show up. We'll manage everything. We'll have top-notch communication. We'll send videos for you showing your property. So again, figuring out the seller's needs is really, really important from the very beginning. And they're not going to tell you everything. Okay, so it's good to go over the options with the sellers because we don't have to do it all the same way. And these sellers that we just closed on that didn't give us any time, they were really nervous about telling me that they can't get their property the way they see our other listings, right? So we usually try to recommend, doing some home improvements, the staging, the marketing, making it the best product so then they can make money on it. We're helping you invest in your property. to them, that was not important. And they're like, would you be willing to sell our house the way it is? I'm like, of course. Like, as long as you understand what the downsides are. Like, and that way there's no blame. They understand they could have made money. So we just, telling them it's the pros is as is, less pain, faster the market, easy. It's the easy button. And you don't need much cash either. So that's part of some people's problems. Obviously, you're going to get a lower price. It has an increased chance of sitting, because this house, literally, there may have been dishes in the sink. I'm not sure. It's not that bad, but it was like nothing was. It was really the way they were living, and she's going through cancer. They're like 80. Like, every last penny was not important to them. Simplicity was. So I listened, and we came up with a strategy. And one of them was, they weren't going out of town, because we usually tell people get out of town that first weekend so we can let everybody in conveniently. That's not for them. So I'm like, can you give us 3 hours a day? And so what we did, and this is the first time I ever did this, I'm like, how can I do this? How can I make their life simpler? Get out for 3 days. We'll do the coming soon, allow agents to schedule it during those 3-hour windows with unlimited showings. So sometimes we have one, solo showing, or maybe 2 overlapping. We left it unlimited. And then, right before going active, we added open houses for those same 3-hour windows. So it was a zoo in there, but it got everybody in a very convenient time for them. Any questions on this? So we're educating them on the process. How's the sausage made? How do we have such good success? It's work, right? If you're going to go the route of putting the best product out there, we're going to tell you how to do that. We're going to tell you where to put money, where not to put money. And these are some of the suggestions and the benefits of staging. We've been using Stage Interior since it's been 8 years now, I think. I think our first one was 2016. Yeah, which got us more listings in the neighborhood. And you make me look, and our team look really good. You help our and you guys are a machine. I tell our clients, okay, they're going to show up at 9 a.m. You need to be gone. Let them do their magic. And by 4 o'clock, you're going to come home. It's like a TV show. And all of a sudden, your home looks completely different, And so and it's nice because working with them, I don't have to think. We just schedule it. I know you're going to show up. You don't disappoint. You don't, it's good service. So that is time that I save and confidence that our clients have in us. And it sells faster then too. Telling them the importance of first impressions. 80% of buyers, and all of the best buyers, will see it in that first weekend or two. So they have to understand, if they don't go the route, if they want the highest price, everybody wants the highest price for the least amount of work. And there's no second first impression. So, if it doesn't sell, we'll just do it later. No, well, you just miss out on all the good buyers. And making sure that they understand that they've got basically 90 seconds before a buyer comes in and decides. And that they have to also, I didn't put this in here, but after 10 days, the power shifts. So you want to tell your sellers, 10 days, all the best buyers are there. So then you're going to be waiting on the newbies in the market. And new buyers are wishy-washy. They don't know what they want. They're just starting their search. They're not in a hurry. So those are not your best buyers. So if you really want to have the best outcome, take our advice. And then the wow factor, these are some of the pictures before and after, that it's impactful for sellers to see this. This is the way people live. It's fine. But the way you live and the way you design to sell is very differently. So it's an investment. And for us, we say, we give 50% back of whatever the staging costs as a credit from our listing commission. So I said, if you don't stage, that's fine. We'll actually make more. But we know it works, so therefore we invest in it. And they were like, oh, that's really nice. But they also pay for it up front first, and then we get paid when it closes and give that credit them. All the tips for a photo shoot, making sure they understand the timing of getting it on the market. I'm not going to really go over that because I've got more important things to tell you guys with our limited time. Okay, so following up with something of value, and that's Jennifer Mack's favorite word, so, value.
Really?
No, it's not. No, it's actually a joke. Yes, no, that's oh my gosh, I'm so tired of that word. Add value. But you have to figure out, what does that mean? Because it's true, you do, but some people just don't know what that is. So sending them comps in advance, obviously, like helping them understand. It's not easy doing analysis for pricing sometimes. It's obviously when you have the house next door exactly the same, it's easier, or in a condo building, that's easier. But we also have to educate them that, like, what one buyer is going to pay for your house, another buyer would never pay that, and another buyer will pay $50,000 more than that. So, like, I don't know who all the buyers are and what they value right now, but my job is to get the best product out there that appeals to the most people, and try to get them in and try to make them pay the most with the least risk to you, right? So I'm not buying your house, but my job is to get those best buyers. Send them your favorite vendors, and then get them set up on a search too, so they know. Like, there's nothing worse than be like, oh, I didn't realize that your neighbor just listed for $100,000 less than we were about to. Like, and so you want to set up on alerts for yourself and them together. Okay, a couple examples. My friend Chris, it took him a year. His mom passed, and it was a long, painful period of like trying to figure out what to do. Finally got a estate sale company. We helped him through the painting and the preparation and all that. It actually, he ended up taking all of our advice, and it looked really good in the end. And I told him when we got the sales price, when we're listing this, I'm like, we're shooting high here, but you understand that. And if we get it, it might have a hard time appraising. Well, we got it, and when it didn't appraise, and he wasn't surprised, we had to renegotiate. So you have to know the comps to know what you're advising, and giving them the power. We can shoot for the stars, but it might not appraise. It might sit there in the market, and then you might have to do price drops, right? Or you can, make sure it moves, but you might leave money. We say we like the sweet spot, so that's an often conversation, but that's where we prefer. But you are the decision maker, seller. Where do you want to be in that range? Jack and Dorothy was the one I just told you about, the as-is 3-hour windows. Our other seller recently, she prepared for a year, and she got a great contract out of the gate. And they made it very good. I know this agent really well. And I told her, I think that we could get you more, considering that the neighbor down the street just listed and yours is much better. They listed at our same price. So if they get that, are you going to be annoyed that they got the same price that you did? Because I think that one shows that we are so much better. And so she's like, Megan, I don't need every last minute. Like, I just want to be done. Like, just shut it down, cancel the open houses. Like, I just want to go back to my house. So, but I let her know that I think we can get you more. Like, are you okay leaving $50,000 on the table? I can't guarantee that. She said yes. So, that's where it's easier for me to accept it, but it's the referrals that come after that. So then she recommended the other friend of hers that's going to be selling soon. So it's that trust that you're creating, and I'm willing to lose a deal to make sure that the people are taken care of. I had 3 sisters that their parents' house, their parents passed, and we got 1.2, and then somebody came in without even calling me and asking if I had anything, which is crazy to me. Like, you would just have your people spend $150,000 over list price without asking the listing agent. Like, don't ever do that. What's crazy was the sellers are like, well, we feel bad that the house is going to be torn down. We feel bad for the neighbors. And I was like, okay, well, you don't have to accept the 1.35, but let's just think about this. You've just increased your neighbors' values, so they're going to be happy about that because now their land is worth more. And you guys could all go buy yourself a new car. And they're like, oh, actually, I do need a new car. So they end up with the 1.35. But they appreciated the fact that I said it was okay. If you guys want to take one too, it's your money. Like, I'm not going to push you into that, but just think about the upsides of the other one, And I have had sellers that chose the lower price for the better terms. So this is also where it's very valuable in terms of consulting your sellers. Comparative realtor analysis, looking at the buyer agent's history. Are they newbie? Do they tend to, have a good negotiator? Their buyers average 96%, or do all their history show 100% or more? Like, they might be in it for their commission. They're not great negotiators. So it's psychology that you were looking at that buyer agent who submits, so you can come back to your seller and tell them, like, hey, this buyer agent tends to do this. This agent's brand new, just got their license. They have no idea what they're doing, which means to me, they don't necessarily know how to manage emotional buyers, and so they're more flaky. So there's a higher chance that those people would crap out on you versus this experienced agent. Dialing for dollars, we tell them we always try to get multiple contracts. We even try to get a backup contract. What's a backup? Has anybody done a backup contract? Yay. I'll tell you, like, it's crazy. Most agents are like, oh, just let us know if it falls through. I'm like, well, if you really liked it, why wouldn't you do a backup? It doesn't take much time. And if I'm the listing agent, I am never going to cancel my contract unless I have something equal or better. And if I have something equal or better, then guess what? I'm more chances I might not agree to all your inspection requests, and they might cancel us because we want to work with these people. So I bought a house on a backup contract. I know it works, and so just try to do that for your sellers because it puts them in a better position. Obviously, pre-negotiating better terms, trying to get very useful information out of whomever. The buyer agent, I once had a buyer agent tell me that the wife hadn't seen the property. We were about to accept their offer. We're like, oh, snap. Nope. So we went to buyer number 2 and said, hey, you guys are about to lose. If you guys want to come up to this, well, we want to work with you then. And so they did. A lender also, like if you see 60-day closing, I would question that. And I would call the lender and say, oh, are they planning on selling their property, to qualify? And the lender will tell you then, the way you ask it, well, no, they're not, they don't need to sell it, but, if they do sell it, then, we can just switch their loan. It's like, aha, I knew it. So we're going to counter back at 30 days and then with the rent back, because we don't want to give them time if their property's not selling and they freak out on us and, and then just finding out possible outcomes. So all this information that you're getting, you're going to tell them this. So then when things play out, they're not surprised. Like, remember we had this conversation when you're giving them all this very critical information, and then what their risk tolerance is. Do you want to go with the, lower price with all the contingencies, and make them choose? What time are we at? Oh, shoot. Okay, it's noon. All right, let me see. Okay, we keep track of all the people. Oh, confidentiality. We're not going to throw them under the bus. So they, again, are trusting us. We keep track of everybody through, and we keep notes on all the feedback from all of you buyer agents that show our properties. There's notes on you and the conversations. And if they are thinking about it, we put them in light green. If they've made an offer, it's in bright green. If we don't like something or it's a risk, we're going to highlight in red. So we keep track of all the information that we're getting. And then this is a conversation. Once we have the offers, we sit down with the seller. I like to do it virtually, and so we can go over and just talk about, okay, this one, $8,000 earnest money deposit is laughable. Like we need to counter that. I don't know why it's so low. This one has no financing. This one has 21 days. So they're all, they understand all the rest of it. And they're like, oh, can we have this and that and that? I'm like, well, we can counter that. So this helps with the conversations of what the options are and figuring out which one they want to work with, and then understanding the risk with each one of them as well. Okay. I talk fast.